Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today we have an absolutely excellent video for you guys out there in the audience related to the super mayor, Tiffany A. Henyard. And yes, we are going to go over the Roland Martin interview where he performed so poorly, got embarrassed so much, got walked all over by the super mayor that he actually had to issue an non-apology the next day, where he brought up information that he should have had prepared for said interview and pretended like he discovered it even though it was reported months earlier. On top of that, he decided in his infinite arrogance and hubris to say, listen, you people criticizing him, you've never reported anything in your whole entire life, so you don't know how this works. The way a journalist operates is that they let the subject lie to them based on information that is public and months old that you could easily be prepared for, and then you do a video later when you correct it based on everybody criticizing you, but you pretend like your critics are somehow inferior to you. That's how journalism works, according to Roland Martin. On top of that, I have actually obtained exclusive invoices from the Village of Dolton vendors, these unpaid people that we've been talking about, and we are going to go through them because, yes, I have the very documents that Mayor Tiffany A. Henyard is suppressing from even the Dolton Board of Trustees, so they can't see them, but we got them here. But guess what? I should just let Henyard lie to me and then actually do the work, because that's what Roland Martin says journalism is. Now, we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
You also, you have a charity that, from the Attorney General's office, is, I understand they sent a cease and desist letter to your foundation?
I don't know nothing about that. I'm not crazy. I'm not
You have
deranged.
Tiffany Henyard Cares, your foundation. So the Attorney General's office hasn't reached out to you regarding your foundation?
So I want to set the record straight. I don't have a foundation. I am a supporter of anybody that's struggling with cancer. My mom had breast cancer, and I'm always push anybody that has that. If someone uses my name to push their charity, or if you say this is Tiffany T-shirt, people gonna buy it. Because right now, consider what? Clickbait. People make money off of my name by views. So you just say my name.
You say you don't have a foundation.
I do not. And that's why I tell everybody, go do your research. I'm not on anything.
Now, of all the great clips from this interview, of all the embarrassing moments for Roland Martin and for our country as a whole, because this is a twice elected official, she holds 2 political offices, this has to be the absolute peak of idiocy. Roland Martin asked Tiffany A. Henyard about a foundation called the Tiffany A. Henyard Cares Foundation, and he actually lets this woman lie directly to his face and tell him that she has nothing to do with said foundation. Now, we actually did a whole video on her fake charity being investigated by the Attorney General and all the different various connections that they have between the two.
I want people to know that I'm caring.
Tiffany Henyard told me in November she cares. Apparently so much so, it's also the name of her charity.
Check it out.
The Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation posts videos highlighting walks and other events that prominently feature the politician proudly promoting her cancer charity.
I just want people to know that, hey, Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation is here. We will help anybody in need.
But Roland Martin is a completely unprepared idiot, so he doesn't have anything to counter that, so he actually buys into, even though he's a bit confused by it, this idea that maybe a foundation that is being promoted on all her social medias, that she has her face all over, is somehow, in some way, shape, or form, not connected to her, like she said. And in fact, there's actually video that he plays of her at an event for this particular charity, and guess what? He still buys into her explanation, even though he's so confused by this, and he can't realize that this woman is lying directly to his face.
So show the video here, 'cause I'm trying to understand this here. So this is a video of you marching with the charity. So what is this?
So what they're not telling you is we literally walked to Springfield to create a bill to help anybody that suffer from cancer.
What is the Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation? You said it's not affiliated with you at all.
Correct.
Well, what is it?
So someone made up a foundation. They named it after me, and they like my work that I do in the community, and it's called Tiffany Henyard Cares. So we all went.
Now, but they weren't registered. Have you contacted them and told them you can't use my name improperly?
Well, my lawyer's handling a lot of that stuff, so all I can tell you is that I'm not the one on anything. That's the only thing I can tell you right now. So I'm just trying to answer to the.
So you're saying there's a foundation that's not registered, but it has nothing to do with you?
Correct. That's true.
Okay.
That's
so you're not aware of any of the work that they've done, money that they've raised, anything along those lines?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, just a quick refresher for those of you out there in the audience from my previous video on this particular foundation. This foundation was actually approved $10,000 from Tiffany A. Henyard. Again, this information was available months ago.
Henyard mixes her two taxpayer-funded jobs and charity work. That's Keith Freeman sitting next to her at a Dolton meeting where he's the village administrator. Freeman is also an advisor to Thornton Township, and he's the guy listed as the registered agent of Tiffany Henyard's foundation.
I think it's just about personal gain and trying to use it as more of a publicity type thing.
Chris Gonzalez is the last surviving critic of Henyard on the Thornton Township Board. He and other critics say public money has been used to fund Henyard's private charity. They say board members were asked to approve a $10,000 payment to the foundation in 2022.
But Roland Martin acts like he discovered it just yesterday in his video released after the interview.
So she said in the interview that the foundation was not hers. This is from a council meeting.
I'm doing and I'm really, really big on that's dear to my heart is I'm real big on a cancer foundation. I have created Tiffany A. Henyard Cares Foundation, and what that entails is helping everybody within the 17 municipalities with services such as well services and resources, such as if you need help paying for chemo, radiation, your medicine, your wigs, your prosthetic, your breasts, things of that nature, even helping you with housing, because I know firsthand how that feels to just not have help.
Now, Tiffany A. Henyard is, in fact, the head of the Thornton Township Board of Supervisors, so she appropriated money to an organization that only became a legal entity the day that that appropriation was made, that bears her name, and said that she was the founder of it while she was doing it, yet Roland Martin didn't know any of this information coming in, and now he's acting like he discovered it anew. Well, Roland, Mr. I'm not doing any research on this at all whatsoever. I will also point out that Tiffany A. Henyard paid for via the village credit cards and via the Thornton Township credit cards
days before a much publicized cancer walk from Dolton to Springfield. Thornton Township credit card records show taxpayers then footed the bill for more than $10,000 in hotel rooms along the route.
The entirety of a walk that, by the way, is featured prominently on the Thornton Township YouTube channel, so she's actually promoting it through official means while simultaneously claiming she doesn't know that it exists. This would be obvious information that was available months ago, but again, Roland Martin is acting like he just discovered it today. That's how stupid this guy actually is.
What I need people to understand is that I love all the people out there who ain't never reported on nothing. Oh, man, you should have did it this way. First, you have to ask a series of questions to get answers. And now you come back with, okay, there are contradictions in the answer.
Now look, it's one thing to be completely unprepared for an interview. Roland Martin has staff. His staff is probably incompetent because they didn't prep him for this. And again, he was talking to a strong black woman who's the first black woman to ever hold that position. So of course, Roland Martin is going to suck up to her because his predominant position is being anti-white. But the fact that he had to attach this level of smugness about how the people criticizing him never know how actual reporting worked is ridiculous and absurd because, again, all the information that he presents like he just discovered it originally was reported by the local news months ago, and anybody could have just watched one of these 2-minute segments where they have all the documents, all the citations, and all the video clips that he used. And he has all these follow-ups, and he's like, listen, we're still going to give Tiffany a chance to respond, as if this doesn't look like the most obvious, ridiculous stunt ever. Again, all he had to do was watch any video related to this, watch any local news story, read anything about her, and he would have discovered these things were true and been able to follow up in real time, but he was completely incapable of doing so. To the point where this idiot, again, was able to accept live on his show that Tiffany A. Henyard is not at all involved whatsoever with the Tiffany A. Henyard Foundation, the one that's being promoted on the Village of Dolton YouTube channel, the one that she participated in a walk with, the one that she appropriated money to, and the one that charges the expenses for its events to the Thornton Township and to the Village of Dolton. Really think about how dumb that is.
Take me through what took place with the change in pay for the Thornton position. What your critics say is you laid an effort to cut the salary if you don't get reelected, but the salary stays the same if you are reelected.
And see, that's again what I mean by research and what I say in the media and everybody doing the smear campaign. It's an ordinance already on the books.
Now, the next thing that I find absolutely hilarious is that Tiffany A. Henyard was again able to fool Roland Martin by telling him that, listen, this story about her cutting the Thornton Township salary from over $200,000 to $25,000 if she loses re-election, that's totally not her. In fact, that was due to an ordinance that was put into place before she was in that position. And honestly, you really need to look into the facts and get your facts straight, because people were just saying that position was too highly paid.
They didn't tell you that, right?
No, what's the ordinance?
The ordinance is on the books. My predecessor, he created that ordinance, and it's already there. That if he was to run or not run, that the salary drops. It's already there.
Okay, so you're saying prior to you coming there, that was that his decision, or was that the Thornton Township trustees' decision?
Well, it's them as a group, because they have to vote on it. It's
right.
Ordinance form, so yes, it was everybody's decision.
Now look, there's a lot of corruption in the state of Illinois. In fact, they have the most convictions for corruption since the year 2000 out of any other state in the union. So it is not surprising to me that the previous Thornton Township supervisor ended up pulling a similar move that Tiffany A. Henyard did, which was to cut the pay down to size to prevent people from challenging his position for re-election. But the thing is, Roland Martin is completely unprepared for this line of reasoning, because it is only Tiffany A. Henyard that brings up the fact that the position was cut before from $200,000 to $50,000, and then she reduced it even further to $25,000 for her political opponent.
You're saying that predated you?
Yes, and it's there. I have the proof for it. Yes.
Okay, so the salary is currently what?
For myself, $224.
So when there's the next election, then if the current supervisor is not reelected, then it drops to what?
25.
Do you know what the rationale was for that?
Well, it was, like I just stated, it was already on the books, but no one did the research. They went and did this whole story of, hey, Tiffany did X, Y, Z. Now, don't get me wrong. We did cut the prior salary was $50K.
I'm sorry, cut what?
$50,000. The ordinance that I'm talking about.
Right.
It was $50,000 that they created. Now, we cut it in half. We did do that because everybody said we make too much money.
Now, Tiffany admits this to Roland, and Roland just accepts this, even though she is admitting to doing exactly what she is being accused of doing, reducing it even further from a reasonable salary of $50,000 to $25,000. And again, if it's about the position making too much money and reducing the salary to save the taxpayer money, why does it only kick in if Tiffany A. Henyard is the one who loses her election? Why does it only kick in for the next person?
So we did do that.
Okay, but it was cut from what, 224 to 50?
No.
What I'm trying to say, what was 50?
The ordinance that they created.
Okay.
Meaning the previous person before me. That's what they created before me. So it was $50,000. So no matter what or who ran against that person, it was already dropping to those numbers.
It was dropping from
whatever their salary was, which is the 224 to $50,000.
Okay, and then when you came in,
I dropped it to $25,000. All I did was cut the
50 to 25
in half.
And why was that?
Because everyone said the salary was too high.
If you want to save the money for that position, why isn't it in effect when she's in office? That's the problem that people have with it. That's the issue right there. And by the way, her ordinance completely rewrote the previous ordinance that cut it to $50,000. So the idea that she did this and it didn't really have any impact, it's just a 50% cut instead of a 90% cut, is ridiculous and absurd in every possible way. We understand why she's doing this. We see what's going on, and she needs to be stopped. But Roland Martin just kind of accepts this, even though she admitted to doing exactly what they accused her of doing.
That's how it works.
Do you have policies in your city as it relates to travel, as it relates to flying first class, what types of hotels to stay in, to minimize expenses for the city?
Well, we have a budget. So as long as it's in the budget, you can basically go to any conference. Any conference you choose.
No, I understand the budget, but so for instance, I've covered City Hall, covered County Government, where they establish, where they say, like for instance, City of New Orleans has a policy that city officials don't fly first class.
Okay.
Do you have that?
We do not.
Do you believe you should have a policy? Because again, the critics are that you're flying first class, that you're staying in four-season hotels, high-dollar hotels, having what they call extravagant dinners, and those are your critics. Are you as a city official, in order to make sure that you'll be on reproach, looking at establishing a city policy in terms of how money is spent when traveling?
Now, I also want to talk about the travel portion of this conversation, because one of the big criticisms of Tiffany A. Henyard is that she flies all over the country. She flies first class. She charges expensive hotels, like 5-star hotels like the Four Seasons, like she stayed in Atlanta, Georgia, to the taxpayer, and basically obliterates the travel budget. And she explains this to Martin, that they have a set amount for travel each and every year, and she's just spending it basically all in one shot, and she shouldn't be criticized because this is all covered in the travel budget. On top of that, when she travels, she brings her insane security detail with her, so they're also all staying at the Four Seasons, having these fancy dinners and all of that.
This is the way I feel about it. People will talk about anybody because they're not doing the work. They only talk about the people that's at the top, the ones that are doing the work. They telling you about travel. I'm in your studio right now talking about travel. What we should be talking about is the $15 million I brought back to my community.
No, I understand that.
No, I know, but I'm pointing it out. But we arguing over travel.
And again, Roland Martin is completely befuddled by this particular topic because he's unprepared. So he asks some basic questions, and he allows Tiffany A. Henyard to say something a little later on that I find to be the most absurd, yet he does not challenge her on it.
Travel.
No. But the reality is, this is a conversation that members of Congress have to deal with, that mayors, city council members, county commissioners.
Yeah.
As I said, I've covered Fort Worth City Council, Travis County Commissioners Court, have covered City Council in Dallas, and this is one of the things that people often look to.
So Martin talks about how a bunch of different cities and states have these different rules where you can't fly first class on the taxpayer dime. You're actually obligated to find the cheapest flight possible in order to make your travels, and if you want to upgrade or anything like that, it is on you to do so.
They look at, in terms of public officials, being proper use of taxpayer dollars. And one of the areas, this happened with Kwame Kilpatrick when he was mayor of Detroit. He was highly criticized for the use of the city's credit card and how he was traveling. And so what I'm saying is, if you have those critics, we're not talking about a large city. We're not talking about a massive budget.
And then he asked Tiffany A. Henyard if Dolton has any rules to that effect, and there isn't any rules to that effect. That's why she's being criticized for this, not being criminally charged for this. But what I find to be the most interesting is he follows up by asking her if should Dolton have this? Should the Thornton Township Board of Trustees have these rules in place in order to prevent people from flying first class around the country? And Tiffany A. Henyard looks this man dead in the face and says, yes, I think they should have a rule like that.
And so, do you believe it's proper to have a city standard that applies to you and all trustees and city employees that says, sure, you can fly, but you fly economy, not first class. And then if you stay in hotels, you don't necessarily stay in Four Seasons or a hotel like that. There are Hyatt, Marriott, or whatever. And so, because of the criticism, do you believe in creating that type of travel policy?
I sure do.
And will you do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Now listen, I'm saying this as somebody who never ever did any reporting to the level of the great Roland Martin. I'm saying this as someone who is not a journalist like our great leader Roland Martin. But to me, if somebody says they're in favor of a policy that limits government officials from paying first class tickets on the taxpayer dime, the reasonable follow-up to that question would be no, not about how the Detroit mayor got caught up in this like it wasn't his fault. It would be, well, why don't you live up to those values now? Because you don't necessarily need the law to support what you're doing in order to do it. But instead, you're flying first class to the tune of $4,000 for your trip to Vegas.
They show township taxpayers also spent money on the Vegas trip on everything from steak dinners to hotels, and $3,741 just on Henyard's round-trip flight.
And to me, that seems like a bit of a contradiction that you're saying you're in favor of this limitation. However, you have no limits at all whatsoever when you are making your own travel plans, again, on the taxpayer dime.
Because of the criticism, do you believe in creating that type of travel policy?
I sure do.
And will you do that?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that also going back to your critics of your trustees.
But he doesn't say that. He kind of lets that stand, that Tiffany A. Henyard is actually a reformer. She's actually in favor of these limitations that don't allow people to fly first class on the taxpayer dime, don't allow them to stay at the Four Seasons and all these 5-star hotels, even though she's doing that very thing, and again, could easily not do it in the interim while this proposal makes its way through and actually gets passed into law and actually becomes a rule that everyone has to live by.
They're alleging financial improprieties. When it comes to documents, they say that you won't turn documents over. When it comes to your city's budget, how is that handled? Is there a city treasurer? Is there a city auditor? Normal operations in the city, there are people who handle those different things. And so when you're a trustee, they can make those requests and those documents are produced. How does it work in Dolton?
Exactly what you just said. Every document we produce, every statement we give them. They sued us. That's another lawsuit they sued us for. And guess what? We won. Because that's what I'm trying to explain to everybody. They just saying stuff. There's no facts to it.
Now, Roland is so incompetent in this performance, you might think that he's getting money from the Thornton Township Board of Supervisors or from the city of Dolton through Tiffany A. Henyard, because it's hard to fathom that a grown adult person who, by the way, already has all of this local news reporting, all these people talking about her on YouTube, all this mainstream media reporting covering her scandals, is not able to think of these things. But what I want to talk about now is the finances related to this, because Tiffany A. Henyard says, listen, all this talk about stuff not being paid and all that, that's all fake news. That's all honestly racism. If you remember in the board meeting, she talked about how her largely black board of supervisors were against her for being a black woman.
Because y'all got false narratives out there, and y'all should be ashamed of yourself. Y'all black. Y'all are black. And y'all sitting up here beating and attacking on a black woman that's in power. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. All the stuff that y'all did to get people to come to our community, to just diss and down our community. Shame on y'all.
And once again, Mr. Roland Martin never, ever has any sufficient pushback against her, despite the fact that the proof in the pudding is in the taste, which you can't taste because Tiffany A. Henyard is trying to block people from seeing what's going on, from seeing what should be public documents. Well, guess what? That ends today. I got some of these documents, I got these invoices, and I want to go over them, having been somebody who never reported anything like the great Roland Martin, so we can see what's actually not being paid, despite the fact that it was authorized by the Board of Trustees and should be issued by Henyard's office. Now look, there is a lot of information contained in these documents. I want to go over them one by one, and what I want to start with is the police department, because we've heard so much, even though again, Roland Martin didn't bother to challenge Henyard on this, about the overtime being paid to officers, like the fact that they're getting 303 hours in one particular instance and upwards of 150 hours on the regular in order to guard Henyard, despite the fact that their department is incredibly small and despite the fact that this is to the tune of $1 million more than the previous administration.
The officers are paid every 2 weeks, which without overtime is 80 hours. But when they're put on Henyard's detail, that 80 hours balloons to well over 100 hours, sometimes 200 hours. And in the case of Officer Terry Young last May, 303 hours worked over a 2-week period. That resulted in a single paycheck of more than $13,000.
Now, we've covered the fact that this is occurring at the same time that Dolton has not made payments on their police vehicles, and those vehicles will actually be seized.
In yet another shock to Village of Dolton trustees, a letter falling on their desks dated February 14th, representatives from Kansas State Bank threatening to repossess 13 Village vehicles, saying more than $76,000 is overdue and climbing.
The Board of Trustees approved payment in May of 2023.
But where that loan payment went that was due 9 months ago is anyone's guess.
Well, guess what? They also aren't paying for ammunition, so your armed police officers that need to be ready to encounter criminals are about to be frozen out by the supplier of ammunition that they go through because they're not paying these bills. And again, I have the invoices right here to show them to you. So this invoice is dated 11/21/23. You can see the sales number right there. You can see that it's for ammunition. You can see that it was picked up on 11/20/23 by Officer Ruff. And this is a $1,119 bill and 40 cents that again has not been paid, despite the fact that the ammunition was picked up by this Dolton police officer. But wait, there is in fact more. because we have another document for a week later picked up by P.O. Michael Gilhooly on 11/30/23, and this is actually $1,179.60 for ammunition. Now, I know some of you are thinking, Sean, that's a petty amount of money. I don't know why you're bringing it up, but the thing is, the way that Dolton is dying is by 1,000 cuts, and when we're talking about a $7 million deficit potentially for that particular city, basic things like this have to go unpaid in order to cover Henyard's travel, and the idea that your police department would basically be out a vendor for ammunition because you can't pay a couple $1,000s in ammunition bills is ridiculous and absurd. And yes, according to my sourcing, they have not been paid as of February of this year, despite the fact that these ammunition orders were picked up in November of last year. Now, there's so much more, and like Tiffany said, this is like if you don't pay your mortgage or your electric bill, then you have a bunch of problems. Well, I have also obtained information from a company that provided 4 light towers to the city of Dolton, and these light towers ended up costing the city of Dolton about $25,000. However, even though those payments for those towers were approved back in July, they have not been paid for said towers. It's 150 days past due, and just in the same way that they are threatening to repossess those police cars, they're actually talking about repossessing these light towers. And again, I have the documents to back this up. So when United Rentals comes and they repossess these light towers, don't be surprised because they've owed this money to them since the month of July. But wait, there's even more. I have a copy of a demand letter from a company called Third Millennium Associates Inc. that has 2 separate invoices that of course are months past due, that of course the city of Dolton is not paying because Tiffany A. Henyard is withholding those funds. And let's go over these so you could see these amounts. Now, the invoices are covering the vehicle mailing services the company performed along with the postage for that mailing, and they are actually getting up there in terms of their heft. So, just the postage alone is $5,476.66. And again, this is from May 24th, 2023. The follow-up, which by the way is from May 26th, 2023, just 2 days later, says programming and system setup for 2023 vehicle and pet application mailing, CASS and NCOA certification for the billing file, provide CD-ROM of citizens who have moved out and within the community, sort intelligently insert vehicles by surname at a discrete household, laser imaging, intellect inserting, and mailing of vehicle applications. Restaurant records was 14,511 vehicle records, 6,386 pets going into the 11,688 envelopes. Mail date was 5/26/23. Now, as you can see, the past due amount is $12,290.32. So yet again, we have another company, another vendor to the city of Dolton that performed these duties months ago for the city of Dolton and has had to email constantly, try to contact representatives, show up to meetings demanding payment with no response, to the point where they're issuing demand letters where if you know anything about legal language, that means, hey, you better give us this money, otherwise we're going to potentially sue you. And again, the amounts are just getting higher and higher. Now, I've also obtained this settlement letter from CCSK Law, which relates to PureTech LLC and invoice number 351193. Dear Mayor Henyard, good afternoon. My name is Daniel Trim. I represent PureTech LLC, the quote PureTech. I am in possession of a contract that was executed on or about August 4th, 2023 by and between the Village of Dolton and PureTech. The initial deposit was timely submitted via wire transfer on or about August 14th, 2023 from the Village of Dolton's bank account in the amount of $32,500. On or about September 9th, 2023, the project was completed and approved by the village, and PureTech submitted the final invoice for the amount of $32,500. Since this date, PureTech has had the following various communications with individuals associated with the village. And there's a list of different various times that they tried to contact them on behalf of this company in order to get payment, and then it concludes with the following. We have been retained to determine the status of this payment payment. PureTech had never worked for the Village of Dolton before, was willing to provide below market value for the project, and completed the project. Said work had been approved by the proper parties. In fact, the Village of Dolton's YouTube channel made a video featuring the ice rink coating that PureTech installed, yet the village has decided to retain monies that PureTech has earned. Further investigation into this matter has led PureTech to the conclusion that there is a disagreement between the mayor and the village and its trustees. However, that does not change the fact that PureTech and the village had a legally binding contract that PureTech has performed as it was obligated to. Now, we actually have a clip of Tiffany Henyard celebrating the ice rink.
Hey, y'all! It's your mayor, Tiffany A. Henyard, the people's mayor. We here in the Village of Dolton, and we about to get our skate on. Remember, when all 5 of them trustees said no, look what God did.
But this goes on to say that, yeah, they should have paid this money, and they have until January 1st for a settlement offer, and they also assessed an interest rate after the date of loss, which is going to be disastrous, and it actually jumps from 6% to 10%, as they let this go on. Now, I've also obtained another letter from LED Solutions, which basically says that they want $18,000 for the LED stoplights, those flashing lights, which, by the way, cost $899 a pop, and they will take any manner of legal action, including suing the Village of Dolton, possible repossession, and again, we're talking about lights that cost about $900, and they have $18,000 worth of them, so this is a complete and utter disaster. 20 stoplights they're just going to yank out of this town of 25,000 people. Crazy. Now, on this channel, we've also talked about the infrastructure crumbling in the Village of Dolton. We talked about how there have been water mains breaking, there's unpaved sidewalks and all of that.
We still have areas that need trees cut, streets paved, alleys paved, sidewalks fixed. It's a lot of that going on.
And a lot that's being spent, not on critical repairs, but on travel, meals, and more by many top village officials.
It's an issue. It's been an issue for some time.
We just look up and we're paying for stuff. And it just makes no sense. She's just doing what she wants to do.
None of them do the things that we do here. We the only ones making sure y'all streets get paid, finding ways to fix what is broken.
And one of the reasons why this is occurring in the Village of Dolton is because one of the companies called MBD Solutions that they would contract out in order to handle this has also not been paid. And I've also obtained a demand letter from them dated January in the 20s of this year, where they say, hey, look, we need our money from August of last year. It was already appropriated. Where is the check? From January 22nd of 2024, to whom it may concern, attach please find a summary of all the outstanding 2023 invoices that MBD Solutions Inc. is owed by the Village of Dolton. The purpose of this email is to ask you when we will be paid for the work that we performed at the village's request for our services. Mike Lovett called your office, tried to meet with you in person numerous times. To remedy this situation, please make a concerted effort to resolve this stressful situation. We are a very small local company, and this is having a devastating impact on our business, as we still had to pay our own vendors for materials and supplies to cover the overhead expenses. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. Sincerely, Michael Lovett. Now, by the way, this is a small firm, and this is not a small amount of money. As you can see, in the month of August, they billed a ton of repairs to different sidewalks and crumbling infrastructure, totaling $71,400. Now, you need to fix your sidewalks if you're a city. I don't care if you're a big town, small town, this is a basic necessity. And they approved this in a September board meeting. They have the invoices for all the different work that they did, and they've already paid for the supplies and materials and for the labor hours in order to cover this, and yet they still have not been paid. They're getting stiffed by the super mayor. And again, we have the invoices and the demand letters in order to prove it. Now, to make matters worse, I have another document that shows that the alarm system at 2 different firehouses in the Village of Dolton is going to be repossessed, because yes, that's a thing that happens when you don't pay your bills, because this company had not received payment for well over a year, going back to 2022. So they wrote this demand letter last year, and by the way, they said that they were on the cusp of repossessing this equipment earlier this month, and they actually attached in this documentation multiple pages of them trying to contact the Village of Dolton for this money. And by the way, like I said before, this is one of those instances where it's not a lot of money, but it's a matter of priorities. We're only talking about a little over $1,600 for the village of Dolton and around $3,200 for the fire department. So right now, we're on the cusp of watching a fire department be crippled by $4,800 in bills. $4,800. But the thing is, I would repossess this stuff, because if I send all these different lines of communication and they didn't respond, that's the only thing that you can do. And finally, we got to talk about these police repair costs, because not only are police vehicles on the cusp of being repossessed, along with other vehicles, but there's actually 7 outstanding invoices for vehicle repairs, for crashes and all kinds of things that these police cars are getting into, and that cost is just not being paid, even though, again, when you're a mechanic and you put all this work into police vehicles, you're assuming that the government isn't going to stiff you. Who do you go to when the police are robbing you via the city of Dolton? And these invoices are just madness. I mean, just the first one that I'm going to display for you, I just want you to look at the amount that they're not paying to this mechanic shop. Now, there's a whole list of services here that you guys can go to, but the total is $7,479.74. But, of course, there's more, because the next vehicle actually needed $11,114.91 in work, and that is also unpaid. And again, you can look at all the different kind of things that they did in terms of services. Pause the video if you need to, because it's just absurd. Now, again, invoice number 3 has $2,735.33 in vehicle repairs, which honestly seems like a break compared to the others. But again, we have unpaid repairs for village vehicles. Invoice number 4 totals in at $7,814.29. Again, big time money for repairs. I guess the Dolton police be crashing all the time due to all the lengthy hours of overtime they have to work doing Tiffany A. Henyard's security detail. But one of the things that made me laugh is the fact that even the small bills are not being paid in terms of repairs to this mechanic shop, because I have a bill of $110, another invoice, final notice, that is not being paid by the village of Dolton. That's like a tire rotation. In fact, let me look at what the actual services are that they're not even bothering to pay for. Yeah, that's right. It's a fender and wheel flare adjustment. No big deal. Now, invoice number 6 is $6,758.97. Again, unpaid. You can look at the dates that these were issued. It's just sloppy governing for all these different things. And finally is $2,606.15. Now, these are over the course of months and months and months. And as you can see, we have major repairs, sometimes going over $10,000, all the way down to petty repairs down to $100. But these people keep getting stiffed. This is what is going on in the village of Dolton. This is why they're broke. All of these liabilities are stacking up, while the super mayor is traveling luxury across the country to Vegas and all of that. And I just want to point out that these are basic things. Remember, this woman spent $67,000 just on her luxury travel from July to November, while at the same time, these basic necessities are going unpaid. Sidewalks aren't getting repaired. None of that's getting done. All while she says they have plenty of money and it's not on her because she doesn't handle anything or whatever. Nothing to worry about. But if you weren't spending over $1 million more on your security detail for your police department, maybe your vehicles wouldn't get repossessed. If you were actually paying for your vehicles to be in service, instead of falling behind on that, maybe you could cover the repairs. It's insane what is going on right here, and it exposes the city of Dolton to all manner of crises because they're losing alarms in their fire department, they're losing lights on their streets, stoplights, all of the basic necessities for the city are going completely unpaid. We have the invoices to see what exactly is not being paid attached with the demand letters, and Tiffany Henyard is pretending like it's no big deal and flying first class around the country, donating money to her own charity. Now, I know that comes from the Thornton Township, that donation, but that's not the point. This is how she treats the taxpayer purse. This is what she does to authorize vendors who in many of these demand letters will cite the very board meeting that the payment was authorized by the Board of Trustees, and yet they still have not been paid. And yet they're not being contacted back by these different people that are supposed to be in charge of this. They're getting stiffed and ghosted by the super mayor, and I gotta say, that's not super at all. Now again, Roland Martin journalist extraordinaire. He didn't ask any of these follow-up questions. He didn't pursue these documents or anything like that, but I did. So maybe I'm in the wrong because I should have just taken her word for it, listened to blatant, obvious, stupid lies about how Tiffany A. Henyard has nothing to do with the Tiffany A. Henyard Foundation that she appropriated taxpayer dollars to and participates in events for. Maybe that's how you really do journalism, but I think this is more effective. The documents for you guys to see for yourself so you could see what's going on in this village. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's still stuff being withheld, still stuff that I have yet to obtain, but I'll do my absolute best to get it for you. But until that point in time, I just want to thank everybody for watching, and that's really all I have for you guys today. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me going over the exclusive documents from Tiffany A. Henyard. Till next time.